right. Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to Behind the Pulpit for, what's the date today? May 22nd, 2023. We're so glad you're joining us here on our YouTube channel. My name's Bob Erbig. I am one of the pastors here at Millington, focusing on preaching, family life, and mission. And to my right, I have a very special guest joining us today. And I'm going to let him introduce himself because I don't even think I can give him an introduction.
Well, that in itself is some kind of introduction.
All right, there you go.
How do I measure up to that?
I just want to say that beautiful beard right there. I can't compete with that.
No.
Salt and pepper beard.
Yeah, the wifey loves it, so I keep it.
Well,
around.
Good. So my wife has forbidden me to have a beard, so I
No.
can't even compete with that. So good for you.
Well, my brother is 3 years older than I am, and he can't even have a beard. It's all patchy and. It just can't happen.
Oh, no.
And I'm like,
See,
he didn't get my
that's
side
rough.
of the genes.
That's rough.
You know, like, yeah, so.
Okay.
Yeah, he looks like a werewolf, kind of.
All right. Well, tell people who you are.
Well, my name is Marc DiGusto, and I work here with these guys as a communications director, and I help everybody out on various different ministry levels, getting their events taken care of from a communication standpoint, getting them out in social media, putting them on a website, giving them a visual language that communicates quickly, efficiently, and so we bring people here so that we have an opportunity to have a captivated audience to speak the word of God.
Yeah. Well, Mark is, we like to call him the comms specialist here at Millington, and basically any kind of graphics you see, any visual language that we have on our websites, that's all Mark right there. That's what Mark does.
All Mark.
So actually, this the studio that we have right here, Mark, you're having a hand in designing it, and your design isn't quite here yet. But maybe you can talk a little bit about the new logo we have, what that's going to look like. Share a little bit about that.
Sure. I mean, the layout and design of the studio is obviously a teamwork between us and me and the production team and you. The shiplap back here is brand new. You probably saw it for the first time.
It looked beautiful last week. It was just, I was like, wow, we got lights. I feel like I'm in a professional studio or something.
It's gorgeous, and it fits the feel. If you've been here in the fellowship hall, it fits the look and feel of that vibe. It's warm, it's wholesome, and it's homey.
Wholesome. Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So what we're doing back here, we're going to be creating a three-dimensional polished aluminum signage. Three-dimensional. It's going to pop out. It's going to stand out.
What was that word you used in staff meeting? It's going to extrude.
Oh, extrude. Yeah. That's Bob.
Word of the day. Extrude.
Yeah, Bob was really going off on that one this morning.
How do you spell that? EXTRUDE. Extrude.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
I don't spell in the air, so I'm glad you did.
In my head. In my head.
I'll do math in my head, but I won't spell in my head.
All right. There we go.
The other thing we got a couple of backdrops that we're designing. I got a 15-foot backdrop at the printer right now, and it's going to have some other cool opportunities to share different video experiences for different purposes. And over here on the side, you won't be able to see, but we got some paper setups and some rolls. Good stuff, and I'm enjoying it myself.
Awesome. What else is going on in the communications department? I hear we had an intern. We got some other things that are happening this summer, right?
I got my first intern here. She's a sharp young lady, Laura Prothero. She's starting up this week.
All right.
She will be helping out a lot with our social media.
So upping our social media game.
Upping our social media game. Okay. Yep. She's
That's what they call them, the youngins do, right?
Yeah, so
the young ones.
I'm taking advantage of the Xennial aspect of her experience and maybe plugging that into the social media experience.
Wait, the Xennial, is that a word?
I just made it up. If it isn't.
Okay,
so it should be.
Actually, my generation, they call there is a span of a couple years that they like to call Xennials, right on the border of Gen X and Millennial.
Yeah, I think that was before smartphones and social media became the mainstay.
Yes,
you have a little experience with what it's like to be without a computer.
Well, the technical term is I'm a digital migrant, not a digital native, as the younger kids are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I still remember Microsoft, the DOS, and what it was like to be analog.
That's true.
I remember the digital migration. It was like middle school years.
Yeah. Well, I'm X-Gen, so I remember,
I know, you're like a dinosaur over there.
Dinosaur, really.
Gen X.
So we're the one that created all that stuff that you're hybriding.
You're the OG. I'll be the hybrid, and then we got Tim back here. Tim's a full on. What are you, Gen Z or millennial? What do they consider you back there, Tim?
I'm a Gen Z. I'm pretty sure. I don't keep up with much of that stuff, but what they tell me is I'm a Gen Z guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just call you Z. There
Gen
you go.
Z. Yeah, so
X, Y, Z. There you go.
it is. We have it all in one room here, except we're kind of lacking in the boomers. So
Yeah. All right. Well.
okay, boomer.
All right.
That's most of our audience. So
That is
There
true.
you go.
And that's
Sorry,
like-
don't offend.
We
Don't
love
offend.
you, boomers. We
Don't
love
offend.
you, boomers. Yeah.
All right. So do you mind if we move on to a little bit of church body life, what's going on here? So we had a few announcements this week, and I think I asked Tim if he would pull up our website. If you are interested in finding out all the things that are happening here at Millington, we have a pretty extensive website that Marc does. Marc does a great job of putting things on there and making it look really, really good. The one thing that I mentioned this week was the youth are going to be going on a mission trip, and they are doing a fundraiser right there. California Pizza Kitchen this Wednesday. You can go there all day. I think they open at 11. They close at 10?
9:30.
9:30. Okay, so you can go get pizza. You can get other things. Marc, I tell you, my favorite thing at California Pizza Kitchen, if you want to get decadent and go in the dessert realm, is their butter cake.
Oh wow!
Oh, dude,
that sounds
that butter
really
cake,
rich.
Tell me more
little
about
vanilla
that.
ice cream, butter cake on top. This is not something you have every day. But if you're coming and this is your only time going to California Pizza Kitchen, get the butter cake, and the youth will get 20% of your butter cake if you go in there.
I've always enjoyed the Thai food pizza where they had it's actually.
But they have a Thai food pizza?
They had do they still have? That's a good
I don't
question.
know.
But they
I always
had
get the
it.
California one.
Yeah, so the Thai food it's actually got peanut butter and it's got the chicken on it. It's everything. It's all the sprouts and everything you can think is
all right.
like a pad thai. It's like a pad thai on pizza without the noodles. So and the bread.
Wow.
I'm a gluten.
Well, the pizza is the noodle, right?
Yeah,
that's the,
yeah,
that's
right.
the
That's
gluten
your starch.
right there.
That's your carb.
My goodness.
So yeah, I used to go there a lot, and they have a gluten-free version of it. That's really sweet.
They do. They do a
It's
good
really
job. They do a good job. So anyway, hopefully we're making you hungry. But this coming Wednesday, the 24th, all day, and if you didn't pick up a flyer at church on Sunday, I think you can download it on the website and just tell them you're with Millington, and 20% of the proceeds go to support the youth mission trip to New Haven. Right? We're going to New Haven, Tim.
that is correct.
Yes,
I
New
will.
Haven.
I will also be in New Haven.
Oh, you're going on the mission trip? Or are you just going to be there and they're going to find you wandering around the streets?
I'm bringing.
Hey, I know that guy.
It's been a while since I've
Tim's
been on
going to
a
be
mission
walking around barefoot in New Haven, and the youth are going to be like, "Hey, Tim."
trip. Yes, me and my hobbit feet. But I'm actually going to be trying to document it and trying to make a small mini doc, maybe an hour long, for our congregation to see what's going on our mission trip. So
All right.
I'm excited for
Nice.
that.
Hey, very, very cool.
So
All
you're
right.
there for a purpose. Okay.
Purpose. All right. So second thing, we just relaunched our Wednesdays in the Word on our YouTube channel. So I think there we go. Tim's going to take us over to the NBC YouTube channel. Obviously, if you're watching this right here, but you might be watching this later on. If you haven't checked out the YouTube channel, we've been slowly adding things in, upping our YouTube game, as it says. Lots of thumbnails that Marc helped design. Tim's been having a hand in that right there. And Wednesdays in the Word is something that our other summer intern, Noah Graves, is taking on. It's going to be a weekly devotional series talking about the topic of unity. There we go. Wow, that's beautiful. Where is that, Tim?
So that's downtown Basking Ridge. So every week we are going to be at a different part of our community. Wednesday, we're going to be in New Providence, in downtown New Providence. So.
All right. So taking us on location around the town. So check out Wednesdays in the Word. Every Wednesday it's coming out, right? Hence the name.
Yes, every Wednesday.
I love the acronym WIW. WIW.
Woo.
Woo. How you doing?
Woo.
I don't know if it's going to stick. But
No.
Wednesdays in the Word.
Can't wait for
Actually,
Woo
no.
to come out.
Wednesdays in the Word. With All right. Anyway. And then lastly, I just want to mention, speaking of downtown Basking Ridge, this last Saturday we were there for Charter Day, and that's a big street fair in town, and we had a presence there. Lots of people stopped by the booth, even though there was some rain. It was a great time to connect with our community. We do love our community, and we want to keep reaching out in various different ways. So that's things that are coming up or that have just passed here at Millington. So that's the body life. All right, next segment. If you haven't been joining us, we've been going through some of the news, and this is going to kind of at the end here. It's gonna blend into the sermon discussion from yesterday. So some interesting things are happening in the news. I got a local one, I got a national one, and then I have like an evangelical one. So the first thing I want to mention about the news, Mark, maybe you heard about this, and you might have some thoughts about this, is that the Bridgewater Mall right down here. It's like the main mall if you live in Basking Ridge, the closest one by our church that's well known. The Bridgewater Mall was just sold. Wow. It was sold. Somebody from California bought it. What do I see here? I'm looking up My Central New Jersey. That's the mayor. It was bought by Pacific Retail Capital Partners. Steve Plenge, he's the CEO, and he says he wants to come to the Bridgewater Mall and he wants to revitalize it so that it's a mixed-use space. Now, I don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means, Mark?
Not specifically, but it does remind me of...
I mean, I thought it was a nice mall anyway, but apparently it needs some revitalization.
Well, part of the problem is that a lot of stores didn't come back, and there's a lot of...
after COVID.
They have a lot of gap tooth stores in there. When I go through there's a lot of, empty spaces.
Okay.
The industry, I think, calls it a gap tooth. Nice visual.
We need COVID-friendly stores?
What was interesting is that I took my kids over there when there was a lot of this stuff going down, and I saw various different organizations take over different spaces, kind of like what they call pop-up spaces. And one was the 4-H Club, and they were doing a robotics seminar, recruiting young children to get involved with building, robotics and computer programming, and they had all kinds of displays, and they literally were working on a competition at the time. So they pop up and they use this mixed use. If somebody needs it in the community and it's more community organizing aspect, that's kind of what I think of when I think of a mixed use space, where it's commercial, it's nonprofit, it's special, pop-up adventures.
Well, I think, in terms of the Christian faith, the word revitalization and revive is something that's used in the Bible. So if we're going to, even from an artistic and cultural standpoint, I think we should be about some types of revival. And so it'd be kind of cool to see how art and everything else is kind of displayed in the revitalization of this space.
Yeah,
maybe you can get some sculptures down there, right?
Get
some D'Augusto sculptures.
Yeah, let's get commissioned out there. I do well enough as a ministry here at the church, so I don't really need to sell anything.
But don't you do do you do like can people watch you make things? Like, didn't you do that one time down in Newark?
Yes,
people walk on the street and they're like, "There's Mark making art," right in front of you.
There was a work of art that I did where we hacked an Xbox scanner, and we took over the storefront, frosted the windows, and we projected an animation that people can stand in the street and project themselves into the actual artwork. So you're kind of waving at the camera, and the sensor takes you and sucks you right into the environment in which I created.
Me in.
It sucks you in.
Like
literally.
Like a UFO coming and sucking me up.
Exactly. And
wow.
So that was a big success. We had a lot of people, funny people, homeless people, police officers were dancing in front of it and everything. It was great.
To the glory of God. There you go.
Glory of God. But from an artistic standpoint, that's I am a sculptor and a painter by hobby trade. And the idea of mixed use and pop-up spaces are very well known in our circles, where we would go in and it would be an art gallery until the strip mall or what have you was able to fill it up with a corporation. So it fills those gaps and adds excitement, adventure, and elements to the community that it's a part of.
Well, thanks for giving us your talents here, because graphics look great, and you just make us look pretty hip, I think.
All right. Well,
anyway, that's my take on it. All right. Other thing I want to mention about in the news is that the debt ceiling is still climbing. People don't seem to see a problem with that. But apparently, I'm seeing in the news today, this is an update from last week, Biden and McCarthy to meet as debt ceiling deadline looms days away. I've been hearing all the doomsday thing, like the world's going to end if we default on our debt and all this other stuff. And I don't know. Like I said last week, I don't think that's a good thing. That's something we should be concerned about, but hopefully we can pray for our leaders that they'll just figure this out at some point here. Can we agree on something?
Yeah, well, not lately, but it would be nice. I'm seeing a lot of grassroots conversations happening between the various different polarizations that are happening, but not necessarily at that level. That's interesting. I keep hearing about this every so many cycles when one side or the other refuses to, sign a budget or what have you, and they freak out. The government's going to shut down. I'm like, the government's not. The essential things in government does not shut down. So you're still going to get your Social Security checks and what have you.
Well, it is something we should think about, I think. So anyway, that's still going on in terms of Bridgewater Mall, debt, and then I have one other piece of news, but I do want to roll into our next segment about the sermon discussion. So let me just get us there. So we've been going through a sermon series on the book of Philippians that we're calling Choose Joy. And those of you that don't know, Pastor Dave, my compatriot, is on sabbatical this summer. And he and I typically split the preaching 50-50. And so for this summer, while he's out, we have some guest speakers coming in, filling in for his weeks. And our first one was Ken Huber, who's a member here at NBC, and he preached on Philippians chapter 2, verses 19 to 30. And the title of his message was Pictures of Godliness. And it's an interesting passage because Paul's been giving a lot of these exhortations to the church, speaking about unity, which, talking about politics like we just did. I think we all want a little bit more unity in our world to some extent. We'd like to have less fighting. But what Paul does here at the end of Philippians 2 is he actually gives a picture of godliness in the form of a couple folks he mentions, Timothy, Epaphroditus, and others. And what Ken did was Ken went through and gave us 3 points to ponder. He talked about through their life, through these pictures of godliness, we should be people who are on mission for the sake of the gospel. We should be people who are living on a purpose living with purpose to the glory of God, and then we should be serving in humility in submission to others, which is themes that Paul has been talking about the last couple weeks throughout chapter 2. Now, speaking of pictures of godliness, Mark, again, as an artist, we were talking about this before we recorded. Pictures and their use is kind of an interesting thing. Maybe you can say a little bit about your thoughts on what does a picture tell us that words can't?
Well, a lot of things. Each form, artistic form, whether it be writing, music, or visual arts, and they all have their own vocabulary and syntax. They all can speak. We understand the language, in our case, English language, because that's what we were brought up in. Every grade in our class, we had to learn to write, we had to learn to read, we had to learn to talk. We lack a lot of what's called visual communication or in our culture, but the majority, there's major shift in how we perceive information now is primarily now visual. We don't read anymore words. We have YouTube that communicates through video. We have graphics that I create that can say the whole sermon idea, the concept of the sermon in one still image. And it takes a fraction of a second. But for me to, when I get your creative briefs, it's usually like 3-4 paragraphs of information that I consolidate into one image. The image has a powerful way about assimilating into the mind, getting into the mind quicker than just words. And we see that God's use of that all over the Bible, Old Testament, and performance art. Eating the scroll. It was Ezekiel eating the scroll or something like that.
I'm pretty sure it was Ezekiel.
I'm pretty sure it was Ezekiel.
Just
Genesis
ate that scroll up, man.
Yeah. Gen 1 talks about how we were made in the image and likeness of God, and we want to have an idea about God, and we can look in humanity and its brokenness, and who was it? I think it was Mother Teresa. I was looking in the darkest places, and I still find Jesus. So the power of the picture, the power of the visual language comes out, hits you really hard. Sometimes it hits the subconscious where you don't even know that it's working its way into your heart. So I'm a big advocate. I use both, and if you look at our website and look at our artwork, we use text and the art, and combined together, you can create powerful messaging.
Yeah, and I think also the idea that a life well lived is something that gives a picture to what Christ is doing in us, and again, that's what I think Paul's talking about here when he talks about Timothy. He's talking about all these people who are seeking their own interests, which is what he's been speaking against. Verse 22, he says, Timothy's proven worth, how as a son with a father he has served with me in the gospel, and I hope therefore to send him to you soon, so that he may serve with you. And then he talks about Epaphroditus, and he's somebody who's a fellow worker, he's a fellow soldier, he's a messenger, he's ministering to those in need. Like, these people were just kind of living out a life that was worthy of the gospel, which is what Paul had been talking about at the end of chapter 1.
What's interesting about that, Bob, is the imagery that we get, and it's written down, it's biblical, but the imagery we get, we don't hear a lot of what he was saying. They're telling a picture story about what he represented and what he did. And I take that to heart in many ways. When I taught art class for many years, from 7th grade all the way up to college.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I talk about is that the things that we value, you could tell from a societal standpoint, you could tell from a historical standpoint, the things that we value manifest into a visual creation. We make things based off of what we value. And an example of that is, I know the medieval churches, apparently the medieval churches took the same amount of time to build one church as it was to build Manhattan. All right, so they put a lot of
the
effort.
artisans that were coming in and making it look pretty cool.
Years and years and years, and that's what they valued. The value of the medieval chapels were to point your way and ascend into the heavens, to look up and look to God, and that's what they valued. They valued their religion. Now, obviously, the medieval times had their brokenness as well, culturally speaking. But we could see in Manhattan what is the value systems there. You look at the buildings, you can kind of get a sense that it's commerce, it's money, it's same thing down to a church. You go into a church, you can kind of look around, see the architecture, see the design, see how they care for their building. You look at how people dress, what kind of jewelry they wear. Pictures say, that old saying, right? Yeah. Pictures say so much, and you can really tell a lot more about a person, a society, by what they make, what they value, what they spend their time on.
On the things that we worship, I often think are things that are high, and I think at least in like colonial days and before, it was often the church that was the highest building in the town, right?
Yeah.
And I tell you though, if you go into a cathedral, even if you go into something like St. Patrick's Cathedral and those soaring ceilings, it does change your heart in terms of how you worship, which is a little different than if you're just in a strip mall storefront, which a lot of churches like to make use. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think in terms of the space, there was a lot of, like you're saying, a lot of well thought out things about how we go into worship.
Some of the sheer massiveness of it, and you walk in there, and you can't not look up. Yeah. I mean, you can't. You're just all you want to do is look up. And when you get a feel for that, and you walk into some of these places, these churches, these cathedrals, it's huge, massive space that puts me in my perspective in many ways. It's like in a position of on earth in the universe to God, and I'm like, to God I'm one-on-one, I'm personal, I'm his son. But by scale, I walk into those churches and I feel small.
Man, you're pretty small, right?
Really small.
Which is intentional. Right?
Yes, it's intentional. It's to make you feel smaller, and that God, as you look up, is the meta.
Yeah. There you go. That is the very meta of you to bring up.
Meta, right.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe to close out this section, I thought this was appropriate, and this is where I say it ties in with the news. One of the big pieces of news that happened this week was Pastor Tim Keller, who led the Redeemer Presbyterian Church in Manhattan for decades, just passed away on Friday. He had been going through a 3-year battle of pancreatic cancer, if you weren't aware of that. And what I find interesting, and this is people that know me know that I was very influenced by his writings. I met him a couple times. Actually, I will mention one funny story. The first time I met Tim Keller was at a Gospel Coalition conference about 10 years ago, and I was there with Chad Boudreau. You remember our friend Chad?
Of course.
Some of you out there might remember Chad. Yeah. So Chad had led worship, was on the worship team at Redeemer. Knew Tim for a part of the time he was there, and he says, "You know what? I know you really love his writings. You look up to him. Why don't I go introduce you?" And so we were at the back of this conference center, and there's Tim. And so right before I think he's about to go on stage. So Chad goes over, and he goes, "Hey, Tim, Chad Boudreau." And Tim Keller just looks at him like, "Who?" And then he goes, here's my friend Bob. He's a big fan. And I shook his hand, and then he walked off. But so the thing was that, and this is where I'll get into Tim's life. So, I was at that conference, and then I happened to be flying back at about the same time to New York that Tim Keller was, and I ran into him in the airport.
Oh, get out.
And I did chat with him. Me and my friend shook his hand, said thanks for the conference, and we actually had mutual friends, so we talked for a few minutes, and even in just the 5-minute conversation I had with him there, which is the only time I've ever talked with him in my life, other than when he signed a book for me, just a very warm person, and you could sense the Spirit's work in his life. And in all the articles I've seen put out there of him over the last few days, that is what people were attesting to. Yes, he wrote this. He was a good thinker. He was a good preacher. But Tim's life was genuine. He was the real deal, somebody who loved Jesus, who followed him, no questions. And that's the thing I think I'll take away the most from Tim Keller, that just he taught me about the gospel, but he got it and he lived it. And just a great loss for the evangelical world, because I think he was a picture of godliness for us. Now you had some interaction with some of the wings that he started, like the nonprofits.
Well, yes, I actually, for about 2 or 3 years, me and a roommate of mine, we actually went to Redeemer at Hunter College for a good 2 years straight. Started getting plugged into the community there. It's tough being in New Jersey to plug into community. But we had a great time and met, shook his hand a couple of times. I did get heavily involved in their program called Center for Faith and Work. Yeah. And as an artist, they had a lot of great programs and insights into how to become, not how to become, I'm already an artist professionally and exhibiting, but it's, what does that look like? I mean, you see workshops of people, it's like, what does it look like to be a picture of godliness, right, in a job, as a teacher? And they did actually, they reached out to the art community, and they did a lot of workshops. I went into the city a lot to do this, and how can we, as an artist, represent in a highly broken corner of the world? The arts are prolific, but also very damaged. And it is hard to navigate that from a faith standpoint. And it was great to have a bunch of other artists. I've rubbed elbows with people who are on Broadway, traveling, TV producers, et cetera. They really have high quality experience over there. And Tim did a couple of sessions in those workshops, so I got a chance to meet with him. And you're right, his authenticity, his warmth, he's got kind of this
desire to engage with questions.
His passion for the arts was also something that you don't see much from a pastoral standpoint.
And was often woven within his messages, which was
part
of his appeal, I think.
Very much so, yes. That's why a lot of artists went there. And he had a passion and a love for the city. I mean, he made arguments on why you should live in the city from a Christian standpoint. And I'm a rural kind of guy, but I appreciated that. But at the same time, he's kind of got this gentle, welcoming spirit and authenticity. Yes. He was strong. Yeah. I mean, I've seen him get into, whatever you call debates, but they weren't really debates. And he would be able to graciously talk them down into a congenial kind of conversation of difference. Yeah. But he wouldn't back down. He was graciously strong. And I thought that dynamic was kind of beautiful.
Yeah. I've heard people talk about him was never an anxious presence. He was calming. Yes. Just a great thinker.
Absolutely.
And I think if there's a great testament, the Gospel in Life, the teaching ministry he started, when they sent out his obituary, basically said, Tim Keller passed away today, trusting in the sure and certain hope of the resurrection. And man, he lived that out.
He did.
He really did. And I will tell you, even having met him once, just reading his books, he felt like a mentor, and it brought tears to my eyes. And I think a lot of other people, that he was, even if you never met him, he still felt like your pastor in a lot of ways.
I think in many ways, I've met a lot of people who was their teaching pastor. They would go to church, and then they would get into his words. Yeah. And they would find him. And
in a world where we often have like celebrity pastors, and he probably would qualify as that, never sought that, I think, humbly tried to use the platform that God gave him.
Yeah, he kind of embodied it and lived in it. He didn't seem to pursue it. It just, he was gifted with so much. And blessed the world.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, and so I think about him here at the end of Philippians chapter 2, where Paul is actually talking specifically about Timothy and sending him to us. So we thank the Lord for sending Timothy Keller to us, and
I always thought
he's
of
now
him
with the Lord.
I always thought of him as a modern day C.S. Lewis, frankly, without the storybook writing.
Well, people have said that,
So
made that comparison. All right, so we are on to our last segment as we're wrapping up here, Tim. Theology Sprint. We've been doing this at the end, kind of a 60-second response to a question. I don't know what the question is, but Tim's been giving them to me, and hopefully I've been doing okay in answering them.
All right. So before we do this, Mark, I will say that California Pizza Kitchen still has a Thai chicken pizza.
Ooh, all right.
So just that for you. So last week the question was on. What was the question last week?
I think you were asking about the different views of the end times,
right?
Or the judgments. How many? Will believers and non-believers have the same judgment?
So we have two of the same options. Those options being a question of canon and a question of soteriology. And today's third option will be a question hermeneutics, or like the study of Bible interpretation.
All right. Do you have one you're most interested in hearing, or do you want me to just pick one?
Bob, I give you three options for a reason here. I want you to, if you want, Mark can pick one for you. And
Mark, what do you want? What do you want to answer
give
to?
those options again.
Canon,
canon,
doctrine of salvation, or what was the last one?
Interpretation of the Bible.
Interpretation.
Let's go with interpretation.
Okay, Bob. What is the prosperity gospel, and is it true?
Oh, was that strictly it?
Period.
Like, explain the prosperity gospel, and we can. If you don't like this one, we can do it.
No, I'll take a stab at it. So my understanding of the the question is, what is the prosperity gospel, and is it true? And my understanding of the prosperity gospel is basically, and I may be botching this, but if you do good works, if you give a lot of money, God will reward you financially in this life specifically. And the issue that I have with that is that over and over again throughout the scriptures, you see God often talking about caring for the poor. The poor are going to be blessed, serving the underprivileged. And so there's not a guarantee that your reward is going to happen financially in this life. I mean, oftentimes you'll see in the Bible, I think James talks about this, that you're going to receive the crown of life in the life to come. Your reward is coming. And actually kind of a riff on that, I would say that the reward is that you get to be with Christ in his presence. That is the thing that we were made for, and that's the thing that's going to bring us most satisfaction. So in terms of the prosperity gospel, you may receive a blessing, but that is certainly not a guarantee, and it should not be your motivation in terms of serving in this life.
Sweet.
So how was that?
That was good.
All right, good. All right, well, thanks so much for joining us for Behind the Pulpit this week. God bless you, and we hope to see you back next week. Mark, thanks for being here. We're looking forward to seeing your glorious artwork behind us very soon.
Very good.